Okay, I'll say it. I am, because we've got 4 chairs, I'm going to actively listen from the front of the stage during the presentations. And you've essentially taken the key part of the job. You already introduced everybody, and they're sitting in order too. So I'm just going to put, so that we can get started, because I'll have an opportunity for people who are coming tomorrow. We'll be doing a workshop around tools in general, focused on the tools that Daniel just mentioned. But I wanted to start with a framing before sending it down the line, because we've conveniently placed people in order. Is in talking ahead of in the panel and with other folks, and just in the field in general, there's oftentimes a desire to talk about, here's all the things that I could be doing, or here are the things that I feel like I could be doing better. So I wanted to take a moment to actually put together a positive framing. As someone who's been doing research in this area for a while, we've got a lot of metrics around the idea that one, compared to what people might otherwise be doing, and there's a whole bunch of caveats connected to this, particularly around transportation, that collective arts and cultural activity is better for the environment than people doing things in isolation. That the arts are proven as a strong community and individual identity reification tool for bringing people together, so social impact. And that if you find anything about impacts of the arts, there's lots of things about the economic driver, et cetera, because they're really strong drivers of local economies. On all 3 of those things, if we go back to like the origins of sustainable development around social, economic, and environmental impacts are positive, which from the work that I've been involved with really changes the context for what one is trying to accomplish. So that's all to say, please don't apologize about what you're not doing, because what you're doing is already enhancing in a sustainable act by working with that. With that, I'm going to pass the mic on to Garrett and take my very inquisitive seat to lead us off.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ian. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Good, okay. All right, my name is Karen. I'm the Deputy Director here at the San Jose Museum of Art. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we've started our environmental practices here. I love this emphasis on positivity and collectivity, because I think it's really very much in line with the approach we've taken as an institution. I was going to just start by saying we didn't start with a master plan or metrics or anything like that. This has very much been a story of small steps and collective effort as well across our institution. I put this slide up to start. This is a piece in our permanent collection by Kelly Akashi called Cultivator. I think that metaphor of cultivating is very much part of how we approach this. So I wanted to, you told me how to do this. Wrong button.
Down is up.
Up, maybe up is down. Oh, wrong button entirely. Okay. There we go. I wanted to kind of talk about this, our work at the intersection of 2 things. One, our work with artists here at the museum, and 2, our internal equity work inside the institution. So starting here with our mission statement, which is to nurture empathy and connection by engaging communities with socially relevant contemporary art. That emphasis on social relevance has been something that has introduced environmental issues into our work very consistently over the last 5 years or so. I'm showing you just a sampling of works and artist-directed ideas that have been very much a piece of that. Rena Banerjee in the bottom right, bottom middle installation we had on view last year by Forensic Architecture called Toxic Eras, a Monument to Slavery, How Do We Take It Down? Love those long titles. The Cultivator piece, and then also we participated in the 4 Freedoms, a Cool Million project with Art and Climate Action. That banner by Hulda Guzman was on the front of the building, and that was part of a larger effort across California, promoting environmental justice by museums, and then the works were sold by galleries to support the preservation of lands here in California. Adjacent to this work in the exhibition program, we've also been building our equity work here at the museum. We've had an equity task force since about 2018, 2019. It's a group of staff from across the institution that have been trained in thinking about approaches to social change and institutional change. What that task force really does is nurture kind of small groups of staff to come together and think about how we can do things differently at the museum. It's really based on the idea of small experiments and pilots and testing, again, rather than focusing on an outcome, focusing on a process. And one of our first tasks from that group was to develop this statement, this series of statements, which is our pledge to our communities. It now hangs in the lobby of the building. It's 9 statements that we collectively brought together to summarize what we hope our work does. So they're both operational and aspirational. But the climate work really came through a couple of these in particular. Leading and centering with artist voices, as I just mentioned. Deliberate listening, learning, and sharing, which is very central to the process we've adopted. And then fostering empathetic human connections. And I bring that one up because some of this is about really thinking about how do you, in your kind of privileged place in the world, take responsibility for the influences of your actions globally. And I think we actually started this work with my colleague Lauren Dickens coming to me with showing some of really manageable projects. So we should really be dealing with climate justice. And as we thought about how to take on a really big project like that, our first act was to do a carbon audit of a single exhibition, which we did manage to do on the second attempt. I just wanted to underscore that this kind of a project is not naturally easy to do. As much as it seems like it's just about filling out forms, there was no one on staff who it was naturally their job to do it. Data was spread across the institution, so there was a false start. I just want to recognize that failure is sometimes a part of this work. But on the second time around, led by Dan Becker on our exhibitions team, we did conduct a carbon audit of Kelly-Akashi formations. And we did that initially with no expectation of what we would do with the data, which I think also was part of what made it doable for us. So I'm showing you the results of that first one here. It's noteworthy that it's really the movement of objects and people that is the most significant contribution to carbon emissions. I'll add, just as a caveat, that we at the museum don't own our building, and it's owned by the city of San Jose. And we are grateful that they take care of many pieces of that for us. So because we don't control or have immediate regular access to our energy bills, we just left that out. It's not in our books. So after completing this first audit, we submitted the results to the Gallery Climate Coalition. And they came back thinking we were done. And they came back to us and said, if you start a green team, and write an environmental responsibility statement, you can become a Gallery Climate Coalition member. And it actually felt manageable. So we had people across the institution that were interested in thinking about this. And we started by just making a list of things we were already doing. That included, we already had LED lights throughout most of the building. Our exhibitions team is really actually quite good at recycling the materials they had. And through things like COVID, which got us away from using paper maps, for example, we'd already started kind of some of that process. So with that list empowering us, we then sat down to write a statement. And I think this statement is significant, again, because it's not about endpoints, but about process and committing to holding that process. And I just wanted to mention, too, I won't read it, but the last sentence talks about caring for our environment the same way we care for our collections and our community. And I think it was really helpful for us as a staff to tap into something we felt like we already knew how to do, right? That idea of care is very central to how many of us identify with our work. So it made it more of an add in than an add on, maybe. With that, we got a badge. This is actually our second badge. It's really motivating to get a badge. And the work's actually kind of accelerated accelerated from there, just with more and more people kind of getting involved and trying things. We did a second carbon audit, this time looking at a full year of exhibitions. These were different kinds of exhibitions, less large scale than the Kelly and Coffee one, 2 permanent collection, and 2 smaller galleries. What's really interesting about it is that the percentages stayed almost exactly the same, despite really different kind of approaches there. We've learned a couple of things and made a couple of adjustments based on that. We're keeping exhibitions up a little bit longer than we used to. And we're also making a more intentional effort to prioritize ground shipping. We've also started looking a little bit into this other category up there, which, while it's sort of unnamed, is maybe an area that we felt like we could make the biggest immediate ongoing differences, and that's usually about materials and printing. So just to list off a couple of things that we've had some successes with. We are in the process of shifting away from using vinyl in our galleries. We're building fewer walls. We've shifted to a much more environmentally friendly paint throughout the galleries. We've changed the way we print on wall text. We used to print on a board that was partially incorporated vinyl, and we've moved towards Falcon board, which is 100% recyclable, and with biodegradable ink printed on it. You'll see there's kind of a webbed patterning that's visible on the side of them, and that's the indicator of that. Our green team has also gotten excited about making recycling a little bit more visible. So we have these shiny new recycling bins when you come in. We've also done recycling training for all staff. And we've worked on instituting a plastic water bottle ban. I'm emphasizing this idea of worked on because this is always a process. But our green team just gifted to staff and volunteers this lovely San Jose Museum of Art water bottles to encourage use of those bottles instead of one-offs. And as this is built, the people are just kind of catching on and sort of spreading throughout the institution. Our educators are getting excited about it. The coloring book we hand out to families is now printed on 100% recyclable materials. And it's also a topic that's incorporated increasingly into our education programs. And we've gotten more ambitious about thinking where we might go next with this work. Our registrars have a really kind of beautiful vision for revamping on-site storage here in a way that would reduce the amount of traffic back and forth, and also ideally filled with green steel, which would be a really kind of state-of-the-art facility. The city's in the process of updating our HVAC system, which we're very grateful for, and looking forward to more energy efficiency there. And we're super grateful to be a fundee of the Teeter Foundation this year, and looking forward to working with Root Collective later this year to kind of continue that work. I just wanted to end by pointing out that we have an exhibition coming up that's also directly relevant to this, opening November 1st. Patty Chang and David Kelly are busy upstairs installing a project that deals with deep sea mining and sort of the fascination and problematic consequences of spaces on Earth that have been uninhabited by humans and what our influence continues to be there. So our openings are always free and open to the public, so I hope you'll come back and join us then.
How was it finding an alternative to vinyl?
Oh, it was a process, and I think we're still living that process. It was actually motivated by that exhibition. I should say that exhibition catalyzed that process by the exhibition by Forensic Architecture that specifically dealt with Cancer Alley, which is an area in New Orleans that is heavily dominated by petrochemical plants. And the artists, and this is like, again, the point that was made this morning about artists' voices mattering. The artists were really insistent that we shouldn't be using vinyl, which is made from petrochemical, right? So that expedited that process, but we still have a backlog, right? So we're not gonna not use what we have, but it's accelerated a commitment and awareness. now you have slides.
Hi everyone, I'm Jayden Lim. I'm Pomo and Miwok from Sonoma County. Yeah, and I'm also a youth program specialist at the California Indian Museum and Cultural Center. So our mission at CIMCC is to take California Indian people out of historical context and talk about them in the present tense. We talk about them as your neighbors, as a contemporary lifestyle, but also acknowledging our deeply rooted traditions, culture, languages, and embedding that into our various programs. We have 4 pillars of our organization. The first one being culturally sustainable pedagogy, meaning that one thing that we find pride in is kind of bridging these intergenerational gaps of knowledge between elders and youth due to historical trauma, due to the boarding school system, due to genocide. So we teach a lot of cultural classes and get elders to work with our Native youth. We do a lot of food sovereignty initiatives, one of that being the Tribal Youth Ambassador Acorn Bites, if anyone has ever tried those. But second pillar is our youth-centered programs. We believe that the youth are the key to changing the world. We believe in future generations. And through that, we have the Tribal Youth Ambassadors Program, which won the 2016 National Arts and Humanities Youth Program Award from Michelle Obama. And we also have our Being with Bears program, which I'll get a little bit more into in a bit. Our third pillar is intergenerational learning, bridging these gaps of knowledge. And then also we love to emphasize people, not objects. Many museums are really fixated on artifacts, and we believe that keeps our people locked into historical context rather than bringing them into the present. So we have a big focus on multimedia. We do a lot of film, we do a lot of art with our youth. Our museum, which maybe if I go back a little, is covered in murals painted by our youth. This is my baby cousin who's reading our front desk sign to remind people that we're still here and we still thrive. Something that really impacted our tribal communities was the Sonoma County wildfires. We experienced Tubbs, Nunn, LNU Lightning Complex fire. Many people in our community were displaced. Many people lost gathering land, lost cultural resources, places that we gathered to do community dinners, create our traditional foods. So it was a very sad time for us, and we experienced a lot of hardship. But ultimately, we're entering a stage of renewal, regrowth, and stewardship. And something that I think is really important to point out when we talk about stewardship is that it is necessary that we decriminalize Indigenous stewardship and Indigenous gathering in order to uplift environmental justice movements. The decriminalization of Indigenous people as a whole and so many other communities in this country is necessary to create solidarity for environmental justice. When I was 10 years old, I was almost arrested by a park ranger for gathering tule for a tule boat for the Tule Boat Festival in Big Valley, Manchuria. That is one story out of hundreds, out of thousands. There's so many people in our community that have been held at gunpoint just for gathering our traditional resources. And I think that this is an issue that we should all take very seriously. When we conducted our survey to kind of figure out what are the concerns of our tribal community post-fires, because our tribal communities are very underrepresented in forms of government, we found these to be the main 4. The first one being the cultural impact, which is the loss of our gathering land, the loss of our cultural resources. The second being health impacts, access to clean water, access to energy, due to so many power outages and power shutdowns. Many of our tribal communities were endangered because we have so many elders in intergenerational households where people are on ventilators. And then we're also worried about the toxins that our youth and our elders are exposed to due to fire-related materials. The socioeconomic impact, which is obviously home displacement, and then also the lack of affordable housing due to home displacement. the economic loss from power outages. The fourth one being policy and infrastructure. A lot of people have difficulty with transportation when they're being told to evacuate their house within 30 minutes and they don't have a car and they can't get anywhere. So that's also something that was a big concern to our tribal community. And this is a community story that we collected during the survey. I'll let you guys read it for yourself because I can't really see it. But it talks a lot about our youth being the key to saving our planet, saving and our future for our future generations, and that's something that ultimately inspired so many of our youth programs. So one of our first youth programs is Healing Through Cultural Arts, which is essentially the idea that we can heal our historical trauma, our mindset, mental health disorders from getting back to our roots, our traditions, our cultures, and coming together with our